Hi, and welcome to our Facebook live chat, where we're going to be talking about global issues in creativity in the classroom. And I'm joined today by Linda Ruas, Malu Sciamarelli, Rebeca Duriga, and Sue Leather. Welcome all of you, and thanks for coming along and joining us for the discussion today. I'll just get you to introduce yourselves in just a moment, but for those of you who are joining us, we're going to be spending the next 30 minutes or so talking about issues of global importance and whether and how we should be raising these in our classrooms. Obviously, we want your questions on Facebook, so if you're joining us on Facebook, which you obviously are, if you're watching this, then please do post your questions into the chat. I'll be putting those to the 4 contributors to the recent publication about integrating global issues in the creative classroom throughout the next 25-30 minutes or so. So yeah, please do put your questions into the chat, and we'll be asking those throughout the chat. Okay, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves. Linda, if we could maybe start with you, and then we'll go around.
Yeah, hi, I'm Linda Ruas. I'm teaching ESOL and CELTA at a college in London at the moment, and I'm the joint coordinator of the IATEFL Global Issues Special Interest Group.
Okay, thank you, Linda. And Malu?
Hi, I'm Malu Sciamarelli. I work in São Paulo, Brazil. I've been a teacher and teacher trainer for 24 years, and I'm also a committee member of the SIG group and the literature SIG, IATEFL SIG.
Okay, thank you very much. And Rebecca, if you could just introduce yourself for us.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I started teaching 7 years ago. I've worked for International House and British Council in Romania, Poland, and Scotland, and I'm now an academic manager in England.
Okay, thank you. And Sue, if we can come to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm a consultant, trainer, and writer. I've been teaching for almost 30 years, and I'm based in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. Okay,
great. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, what I'd like to do now really is with each of you, obviously, as we say, you've made contributions, or you've contributed chapters to the publication. I wonder if we could kind of go around again for each of you, just to talk a little bit about how you contributed and what you've contributed to that publication. So, maybe Linda, if we come to you first for that.
Okay, yeah, my chapter in the book was about the Sustainable Development Goal number 2, Zero Hunger. So it's about food and hunger and the world. Food is such a sort of important global issue, and it's something that everyone covers, daily routines, recipes, that sort of thing. But this is more of a political take on it, like, should we put palm oil in our food if the demand for palm oil destroys the forests and wildlife on the other side of the world? Should we eat all these nuts that is siphoning off all the water away from the poorer communities? And this shows how interconnected the world is by producing the food. My tasks in my chapter are trying to get learners thinking a bit about stuff like the production chain, production processes, fair trade, ecological effects, environmental effects. One of my tasks, I was doing it in class this morning actually, it's works with pie charts. It's got the percentage of calories the average person in a few different countries gets from various food products, meat, dairy, grain, and other, and comparing those percentages across the world. So varied tasks on food and hunger.
Great, thank you, Linda. Okay, and Malu, if we can maybe come over to you.
Thank you. My chapter focuses on the global goal number 9, that's build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation. And it explores how us teachers can offer activities, role modeling and support, and value creativity, active engagement, and critical thinking skills for children to learn a language through play. The focus of the chapter is to show that playfulness and creativity are essential in the classroom, not only for learning English, but also to help students think of how they can develop a sustainable society prepared to accommodate the rapid changes associated with innovation, technology, and globalization. Of course, the focus of the chapter and the book is to teach English, but I think it's very important to educate students about the global issues to empower them to join the movement to tackle the world's problems covered by the SDGs. As I said, my chapter covers SDG number 9, the Sustainable Development Goal number 9. And one of the targets of this SDG is to provide affordable access to internet in the least developed countries. One activity that I always do with the young learners it's called the Internet String. And these activities help raise awareness of what it is to be like to be in a country when there's no internet. So you can focus the language that you want to work in each lesson with this activity, for example, vocabulary related with technology or collocations, and ask students to make cards. One of the cards, they have the pictures, and the other, they have the words. Then you divide the students into 2 groups. One, they have the cards and string, and the others without it. The objective of this activity is to ask the students to match the cards, but they can only do that if they have the string. This is to show that without internet, students cannot connect, learn, communicate, and network with the world. And if everyone wants to find out more about this activity, you can find the full description in the book.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be putting the link to the publication in the chat, so you can download that for free from Teaching English. Okay. Rebecca, if we can come to you next, please.
Sure. So I wrote chapter 17 about SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. I'd say the chapter's meant to raise awareness among young adults, so students aged 14 to 17, of the contribution made to a fairer and more peaceful world by certain men and women throughout history. And then some practical ideas are given so that students can build on this foundation laid for us all. One activity, for instance, revolves around Martin Luther King, where the teacher has the students focus on the famous I Have a Dream speech, and King's use of 3 rhetorical devices, namely ethos, or the speaker's credibility, and then pathos, the emotional connection to the audience, and finally logos, which is about using logical arguments. Then students think of a worthwhile, bigger than self dream of their own, for instance, university education available to all, and use a worksheet to organize their ideas for their speech. On this worksheet, they have questions like, why is my dream important, not just for myself, but for the whole world, really? What obstacles stand in its way, and how can I use ethos, pathos, and logos to persuade my audience? With the teacher's help, students then write and film their speeches. I thought of, then showing the films to other classes, or as part of special Martin Luther King events, or they can be posted on websites dedicated to social issues that the students care about and would perhaps like to raise money for. And once again, I just hope teachers find this and other activities in my chapter useful in terms of awareness raising, and then also practical ways in which the young generation can be encouraged to care about and promote a peaceful and fair society for us all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rebecca. That sounds interesting. And finally, Sue, over to you. Okay.
Yeah, just unmuting there. Good morning, everybody. So my chapter is about extensive reading. And in the chapter, I show how you can raise issues of equality and injustice. And it covers a number of different SDGs. So extensive reading, graded readers. Why graded readers? Well, I think that stories engage students on a very emotional level, and they can be used to great effect. They talk about characters who can bring issues to life. So it's not a kind of dry subject. And of course, they're a great source of classroom discussion. My chapter talks about several ideas that I use with different graded readers. And one of them is on a story of mine, which is called The Choice, which I'm holding up here. And The Choice is really about a kind of gender issue. So it's the story of a young woman, Anna, who is married to Joe. They're happily married. They both want children. Joe at the moment has a very good job. Anna is a student at, studying for a PhD at Cambridge. And so when she leaves, she's going to have a very good job indeed. They both want children, but Joe wants children now and Anna wants children later. So this starts to become an issue in their marriage. So what I'd like to do to introduce the book before the students have actually read it is to say, okay, set the scene, Anna, Joe, what the situation is, and then split the group into two. So half the group are Anna and half the group are Joe. And in their group, they try and think of the reasons why on Joe's side they want children now, and on Anna's side why they might want to have children later. So they do that for a while, and then they are repaired. So one Anna comes with one Joe, and then they have the discussion about when they should have children. So I think that this is kind of an interesting introduction to the book. They then can listen to the book online. You can download it freely online, and I have a link in the book. And they can listen and they can compare their ideas and their discussion with the discussion that Anna and Joe have about this problem. And I think, again, it brings up a very interesting issue about gender and about, you know, having children, not having children. So that's one of the ideas in the chapter, and I hope you will enjoy it and some of the other ideas. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sue. That sounds interesting as well. They all sound very interesting ideas, and it's definitely a worthwhile publication to get hold of if you can. Well, you can, because it's easy. You can download it for free. I just want to go back a little bit before you were talking about your chapters. And Malu, you mentioned you were part of the C group, and I imagine there are probably people who are watching this who might not know what the C group is. I wonder if you could maybe just expand on that a little bit and just tell us what that's about.
Yes, of course. The C group is an independent and informal group of ELT professionals, and it aims to share information, promote reflection and inquiry, and encourage action through more creative and open teaching practices. It's open to everyone to join. So if you feel that you want to join the C group, if you feel that you have something to contribute to the group, your creative practice, and also to see what we've been doing, you can visit the website. It's thecreativitygroup.weebly.com. And if you feel like you want to join, please just send me an email, and I'll give you more instructions on how to join them.
Great. Okay, thank you, Malu. Okay, we've had some questions coming through. We've got one which actually came in before the chat started. This is from Carla Torita in Portugal. And she's, and I think it's an important point where, especially perhaps with teenage learners maybe, where they don't really feel that the confidence, or they don't feel they're free to give their opinion, and maybe are afraid that someone's going to criticize them if they kind of speak out about certain things. So just kind of wondered what you thought about that, and whether you had any kind of ideas or strategies for dealing with that. And Linda, maybe if I can come to you for that question initially.
I don't actually teach teenagers, so it might be best to ask the others.
Okay.
But bringing different ideas in, and giving them ideas for or against a certain argument might be good. Then they don't have to put their own ideas on the line.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Malu.
I do teach teenagers, and what I feel is that they love to talk about their ideas. Yeah, so they are just waiting for you to ask them. Even the ones that are a bit shy, they're waiting for you to bring these issues so they can talk, and then they can contribute to the classroom. So I feel that they are really waiting for you to bring these ideas in the classroom.
Okay. Yeah, Rebecca or Sue, do you have any comments on that? With maybe students who are a bit reticent or a bit reluctant to give their opinions?
Sure. Again, in my experience, once you give them something that they're interested in talking about, everything's fine. But I was thinking actually of project work where they have to share responsibility for their ideas. And if they're shy or just fearful to say something, they can always rely on a partner, check with them first, or get them to do something practical, really. I mean, a poster, a flyer, or something advertising their idea, and then they get confident enough to even have a whole class presentation, really.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I agree with everything that's been said, really. I think certainly with stories, I think the great thing is that you can look at an issue through a situation, and you can agree with a person, a character, and you don't have to say this is what I believe, but you can actually do it a different way. So I think as a teacher, you have to be quite clever about how you present global issues, and also not expose students too much so that they have to necessarily say exactly what they think about an issue. That can be difficult.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, certainly my experience with I mean, I have taught a lot of teenagers, and once they kind of get going, it's difficult to stop them. But it's setting up the scaffolding, I think, and like you say, so putting them in a non-threatening situation where it's not always necessarily about expressing their opinions initially. That it works. Okay, move on. Another question. I'm not sure who this is from. It might be from the same person. Let's find a different question. Okay. Any tips on avoiding discussions when you have students with two different points of view, with not two TWO but TOO? So I guess it's avoiding conflict. I mean, how do we go about avoiding conflict when dealing with some of these issues, or do we want to kind of encourage conflict? Not too much, obviously, but Malu, I don't know if you have an answer for that.
Yeah, I work more with young learners and teenagers, and with young learners, that's easy to do. I think they all respect their opinions, and then when one opinion is too different from the other, what they do, instead of criticizing, they embrace that idea too. So that's interesting to see them for them. The teenagers, when they start doing that, there's always one that's going to interfere, and what I do is I bring them limits to that conversation. Yeah. So if something is becoming beyond the limits, and then I stop and I say, okay, let's respect everyone's opinions here. But what I can see from the groups, that teenagers that I've taught, is that there's always one that's going to do that. There's always one that's going to moderate the conversation. So I've never had really to interfere.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Linda, do you have
yeah, often things have got quite heated in our classes, and I think it's really good to see people stretching themselves a lot to argue and to put all the other viewpoints. Sometimes I've had to say, stop now and let's continue on Moodle afterwards, because they have remote access to the college Moodle, and then when they're thinking about what they're writing, they can think more carefully to put their viewpoints down on paper, and then we can look at it later in class and even correct the errors. So diffusing it, writing a bit later on Moodle.
Okay. Rebecca or Sue?
Yeah, I thought of, actually, I try this with adults all the time, especially opinionated adults. Just instead of focusing on each other and maybe, sometimes accusing each other of being in the wrong, just focusing on a solution, right? So if both feel strongly about this, what would be the solution then on either side? And then they start working together towards that solution, because that's what really matters, right? The positive, what comes out of a bad situation. So then things get better, I'd say.
Okay.
Nothing to add, really. I think it's more or less been said. I think good classroom management, diffusing the situation, as Linda said, all these things can help.
Okay, all right. I guess kind of related to this is perhaps with some of the global issues that we look at. They can be quite heavy topics, I guess. So how do we make sure that things don't get too heavy, too depressing in class when dealing with some of these issues? And maybe Sue, if I could ask you that one.
Yeah, it is a difficult one. I think you have to make a judgment about your class and whether they'll be able to deal with that in a way that doesn't kind of bring the energy all the way down. I think, again, it is a judgment. But I think if you can, I don't know, the issue of slavery, for example, came up. I was doing some work from the book with my Iranian teacher trainers. And this issue of slavery came up, and some of them said, well, I don't think I'd want to touch on that because it's such a difficult issue and a very depressing issue to think about. Again, I think if you can find a story about people, you know, that brings it to life for people so that they can relate to it better, and hopefully something positive at the end of it, you know, that actually says, well, we're doing something about this, you know, it's always existed, but we have only now are we doing something about it. I think you can't hide away from these issues. They're part of the world, and you know, we talk about them in English as we talk about them in every other language. So for me, it's necessary to go there sometimes.
Okay. Rebecca, if I come to you.
Well, like Sue said, social issues can be depressing, I guess, but they don't have to be. I mean, in my chapter, for example, I try to turn something sad, for example, again, the topic of slavery, into something inspiring by focusing on someone who actually did something about it. Lord Mansfield, back in the 18th century, he was the one who started it all by making a revolutionary legal decision that eventually led to the abolition of slavery in Britain, which is just fantastic. And I think it's a story that not many people know about. And that's why it's good to bring it to the classroom and show them, right, so there was this problem, and this is the beginning of its solution, really. And what can we do about current problems? I mean, what solutions can we find to those? And then showing that basically even very big problems aren't solved sometimes by big people. It's just the efforts of many, many people in the world, just like us, really. So it's about everyone doing their part and encouraging students to think about that, and realizing that the more of us actually do something to solve these problems, the better. And there are many, many things that can be done. I mean, petitions and sites that you can contribute to, or people that you can talk to or email to show that you support the cause and you want to do something to make a change for the better. So I think, yeah, it's turning something that can be quite depressing into something that can be inspiring for all people, really, whoever we have in the classroom.
Okay, great, thank you. Malu or Linda, did you have anything to add to that quickly before we move on?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go on, Malu.
No, I was just going to say that I work with the young learners. So what I do is to raise awareness of the global issues with activities involving play. So we do lots of projects. For example, as my chapter is focusing on SDG 9 industry, we have an activity where I show that, okay, the industry, they may be killing animals, destroying the environment. So what will you do to change? So these things are there. And through the projects and through the play, they know what's happening, of course, because as you said, we cannot ignore the global issues in the world, but they also think about what they can do to help. And that's when they use the English in the context too. So that's the most important thing for an English classroom too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. More feeling part of a bigger movement to find a solution is a very positive thing. And these big issues don't go away if you ignore them in the classroom. They're always going to be there. They're more likely to go away if we do something about it, raise awareness, get people involved in action.
Okay, great, thank you. Question from Rezwana Islam in Bangladesh. She's asking, we're talking about political issues, environmental issues, and various other issues that come in the Sustainable Development Goals. She's asking whether these topics they're already kind of covered in level appropriate course books, and I guess maybe wondering why the need for this publication is there. Personally, I mean, I think my experience of course books, politics is largely avoided. Environmental issues obviously are covered, but I just kind of wondered what you kind of thought about that. How you feel this publication is. I mean, it's obviously different from a course book, but in what ways does it take these issues maybe a bit further, or how do they differ? And maybe Malu, if I could come to you first for that.
Well, I think that this book is a complement of the course book. Yes, the course books that I work with now at the moment, they work with critical thinking. They don't bring politics into the classroom, religion, diverse culture, but they raise awareness of some environmental issues. But it's it's not that much, so I think it's not enough. What this publication adds is to focus on creative activities, and this is what we are bringing, creative activities into the English classroom as additional activities. So it's not going to replace the course book, but it's going to be complementary to the course book. So that's what I think it can be different too.
Okay. Rebecca, have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think the book's just so fresh, really. I mean, whatever course books we have, the book's so recent that the ideas in the book will definitely not be in the course books. And also they're practical ideas. They're just ready-made for teachers, busy teachers, to take away into the classroom and use as such, really. And a full book, over, I think, 20 chapters full of practical ideas to use in the classroom. That's not, is a big deal, I'd say.
Okay. I do want to come to you, Linda and Sue, but I just want to, I'm just kind of aware of time and that we've got lots of questions coming through. So if you don't mind, I'm going to move on to another question that's come through. And this is with very low level learners, so very kind of basic, maybe A1, A2 level learners. How do these kind of activities, how can we approach this kind of activity, this creativity, and the SDGs with very low levels? So Sue, if I come to you for that one, sorry, it's a difficult one, isn't it?
That's a difficult one. Yeah. Well, I think I keep coming back to my chapter on readers because, you know, that's what I'm most involved in. And we have readers at very low levels. And in fact, the choice is quite low level. I think it's probably A2, I'd say. So I think that students can read about a situation through a story or in some other way and talk about it as much as they're able to talk about it, with perhaps some kind of scaffolding from the teacher. And they may also, in certain situations, you know, read the story, talk a little bit in English, and then move into their own language in certain situations to talk about the issues behind it. So the story is taking them through English to the situation. I think obviously, again, good classroom practice and kind of scaffolding will help students to discuss, as much as they're able, discuss these issues. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's, you know, really where the combination of these issues and the English language teaching kind of combines and comes in to help with that. Linda or Rebecca or Malu, either of you want to comment on that?
I don't teach younger learners, at lower levels actually, but I was thinking of an activity from Malu's chapter, which is using origami to raise awareness of cars, planes and boats, and the students actually make their car, plane and boat to discuss infrastructure and sustainability. So everyone can follow those instructions and make those origami things, something creative, and then lead on to, it could be a very vague approach to the subject of the sustainability goal afterwards, if they haven't got the level in English.
Okay. Malu or Rebecca, do you want to add anything?
I think I was going to mention the same activity. That we work with vocabulary with young learners, and then they can move on to their in Portuguese. That's my first language. That's okay, but they will raise awareness of the global issues. That's what's the most important thing.
Okay, great. I think we've pretty much run out of time. There are more questions, and I'm very sorry if we haven't managed to answer or discuss your questions. We've got lots of questions from Maria Costa, Camila, who I think we did answer, Carmen Almeida, and lots of other people who have posted questions. Unfortunately, we do only have 30 minutes, so we haven't been able to get through everyone's. I think maybe just if we could just go around and a final. I mean, obviously the point of this panel discussion was partly was sort of two parts: how we raise issues of global importance in the classrooms, and if and why we should be doing that. And I think, you know, we've obviously heard from all of you lots of fantastic advice and ideas. Just maybe one final word on why you think it's important and why you got involved. Why is it important that you know, as language teachers, we also focus on these global issues? If we could just sort of round up with that as a final thoughts. Linda, if I come to you first. Sorry.
I was just about to say that we often feel very alone working with global issues because there's not very much in the course books because of the parsnips. They avoid those parsnip topics, and that we often need to work together with other people to create our own materials and get the support. And the Global Issues Special Interest Group from IATEFL, that I'm the joint coordinator of, that's a really good place to start because you've got the support and the people and the materials and the help. Because sometimes it's difficult branching out on your own. This book, the Sustainable Development Goals book, is a brilliant way to start and then move on to other groups afterwards to get that support.
Okay, thank you. And Malu, then continue.
I also like to think that we as language teachers, we are also educators, yes, and we are not only teaching the language, but you are also adding value to each student. That's something that's going to be important for their lives. And the global issues are there. It's impossible to ignore all the problems of the world. And so I think that that's really important to bring them into the classroom and to make a change for the better.
Thank you. Okay, and Rebecca, up to you.
Well, I just remember what one of my trainers told me just before, a very important observation. And he said something like, don't worry, it's just an English lesson. It's not as important as brain surgery. People won't die if you fail or something. And I think I now disagree with that, to be honest. I think an English lesson can be just as important as surgery. Sometimes it can be so much more than just teaching English, just teaching language. It can change people's lives, get them thinking about other people, turn them into better people really who care about others and help others practically, not just theoretically or like chatting about that. So yeah, I chose to write for the book just because I care and I want other people to care or like chatting. And I think I've managed to do that in my classroom ever since.
Okay, thank you. And Sue, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, well, I think that English is not an academic subject. It's a real living language, and we use English every day to talk about these issues that are there in the world. And I think, as my colleagues have said, they're not going to go away, these issues. I also think about, myself as a language learner, when I've learnt various languages in my life, and when I've been learning them, the most interesting and most challenging situations have been when I've had to really discuss real things and things that are happening in the world, happening to me or happening to people around me. And I think that really pushes your language in a way that, grammar exercises just don't. Because why? Because you're emotionally invested in that topic. And I think the bringing together of these two things, the emotional investment and the living language is what our job is.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you very much. Just a final word, just very quickly, because Linda, you mentioned parsnips, and some people might not know what that acronym is. Parsnips are various topics that aren't generally allowed to be included in course books. I can't remember all of them. I know politics,
alcohol, religion, sex, narcotics, isms, and pork.
That's it. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so there you go. You've got those there. You won't see those in course books generally, which is another reason why we have a publication like this, which deals with some of these issues in a deeper way. I think we've pretty much run out. Well, we have run out of time. We've gone over a little bit. So Linda, Malu, Rebecca, and Sue, thank you ever so much for taking time out of your busy days. Linda, I know you're in the staff room and we have to rush back to classroom now, so thank you for that, and thank you everyone who has joined us. I hope you've got a lot out of the session. I hope you've enjoyed it. You can join us on World Teachers Day, which is 5th of October, where we'll be having 2 webinars which continue this theme. First one is a panel discussion, which will include contributors to the book. Malu, you'll be joining us, and Linda, you will also be joining us, and they'll be joined by Adrian Tennant and Chrissa Papalazaru to discuss if and how we should bring social issues into the language classroom. So please try and join us for that. That'll be a 60-minute webinar. And then later that day, on the 5th of October, Nick Peachy will be presenting the background to the book, and some practical ideas around creativity and sustainable development goals. And you can download that book on teaching English. I'm fairly certain that Anne in the background there is going to put the link onto the page so you can see that and you can download the publication. So that's all we have time for. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us, panelists and participants, and we hope to see you on this page. Please do continue your comments. We'll try and answer the questions through text on the page later on, and hopefully see you on World Teachers' Day on the 5th of October. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon, morning, evening, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you.